Okay, good.
Welcome, everybody, to episode number 92 of the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. And if all goes well, this will be the first episode that you can actually watch us on video if you choose. Of course, we'll always be available on audio. But, hey, you can see Jeff and I. Who's this Jeff guy? He's our guest today. My guest today is Jeff Manchester. Let me tell you about him before we get going. He's worked with more than 1,000 presidents and CEOs as a strategic advisor. He's a partner in Shift 180. He is a master in empowering individuals and teams to maximize their true potential. He began his career with one of the big six accounting firms, or consulting firms, and subsequently co-founded a highly successful systems consulting business. I believe it was an Inc. 500 business as well. He's a serial entrepreneur. He holds an MBA from Florida State University and a BA from Wittenberg University in Ohio. He holds additional advanced degrees as a certified coach and certified group facilitator. And he's a keynote speaker, and he's our guest today. Jeff, welcome. I'm glad to have you on the Remarkable Leadership Podcast.
Thanks, Kevin. Glad to be here. Looking forward to it.
So in that introduction, it doesn't, and in case you don't know everybody, Jeff gives me the introduction. I didn't even have to edit this one. But he didn't say one reason why he's here. He's also the co-author of a new book, came out in January of 2018, along with Barry Kaplan. The book is called The Power of Vulnerability. Here it is, everybody, The Power of Vulnerability, how to create a team of inspired leaders by shifting inward. And I said earlier that he's a master at empowering individuals. I tried to say it carefully, so I didn't say empowering them. So let's start with that key concept from the book, this idea of empowerment. What is it, and how is it different from empowering?
Yeah, well, thank you. I think there's a key difference. Why, when you think about empowering people, many times people think about trying to have the right resources, the right staff. You're kind of given all the responsibility to go do your job. So you're fully empowered. Your boss says, "Hey, go do it. It's yours. Go make it happen." Right? Yep. Jean-Luc Picard, engage. Right?
Okay.
So, but there's a difference between being given the authority and actually being empowered to make it happen. Empowering meaning, do I feel safe enough to actually step into my leadership role with my cohorts and my colleagues to be able to share my opinions? What if I have a difference of opinion from my boss or the others in the room? Do I trust that I can show up fully and completely? Because at the end of the day, Kevin, your experience and your background and your, family values and history all create this really unique, special gift, which is you. And that's the power you get to bring. But if I don't feel like I can fully show up with all of that, and I begin to govern what I say and how I say it and who I say it to, and pretty soon I'm not stepping into good-hearted debate on concepts, issues, strategies, challenges. I'm not showing up with my real issues. I'm not asking for help when I actually need it.
Right. I'm filtering in 100 ways, right?
Yeah. I filter in 100 ways. And so I think most of us can appreciate that depending on who I'm talking to, I many times am filtering the conversation. And what I want to do is to filter less when I'm working, because then I'm bringing more of my best skills to the job.
So that raises for me a thought as you're sharing that. I think about a conversation that I have with folks semi-regularly. One of the things that we have is a DISC assessment that people can take advantage of, discpersonalitytesting.com. But sometimes people will ask, and you've probably heard this, and lots of you listening have heard this, you're asked to take some assessment of some sort. And everyone should know that there's no right answer. And yet people will say, am I answering this at work or at home, right? And that's part of right at your point, is that if I'm already asking that question, then I'm not bringing me. I'm not bringing all of me, or I think I got to be a different me or something like that. Anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, well, I think you're right on point. I think that, many times people are just saying, well, I could never say that at work, or I can never say that, or I can never do that, or I can never. As soon as I know I'm saying those words, I've already shut part of me down. And I think that when you look at all of the surveys right now in terms of employee satisfaction, it's horrific. 80 percentile where people are dissatisfied. And so many people are feeling disempowered. They're feeling like they're just, part of the cattle call, going into work, doing their job, and coming back and collecting a paycheck. And there's so much more that every single person has to offer than that. And so it's, that's the opportunity that we see.
So that raises another question for me. I think all of us listening would say, hey, that's what we want. That's the organization that we want. That's what I want to foster as a leader. And yet, is there a point where that's too much? I mean, is there a point of, as you've described it, Jeff, is there a point at which we're telling people not to filter anything, where does wisdom play into this about what I shouldn't say or whatever? I guess I'm just trying to get a little tension here about where do we stop? Or is there a place that we stop here?
Right. Well, work is never going to be therapy. And so we know that there are, there are situations that are meant to be, about me and kept about me. But, I think the key is we have to create a culture. And that's the difference, Kevin. These are tools that really they're disruptive tools for traditional cultures. And the notion being that if we can begin to develop a culture that builds in certain levels of confidentiality. So if we bring in a management team and we begin to have conversations, and one of the guys happens to be struggling with going through divorce, for example, unfortunately all too common today, I wonder if that's actually going to impact what he does at work. The answer to that is yes, of course.
Almost assuredly, right?
I mean, how can it not? Whoever's been through that understands it's a roller coaster. And so I don't have to get into the details of my marriage situation, but it would be nice if I could share, hey guys, I'm sorry, I'm struggling with a divorce, and I'm partially here, but I'm partially thinking about my attorney meeting later today. Right? I mean, that's fair.
I think that's a great example, and that's kind of where I wanted to go, and it leads me to my next question. But I think we got to create a level of trust and a level of connection. We're going to talk about that word in a little bit, that allows for that to happen. But I think that's getting at the title of the book, which is the power of vulnerability. I mean, you just described a situation of someone being vulnerable. We spent the first 5 or 6 minutes here talking about the book and haven't used that word vulnerability yet. So let's talk about what is the power of vulnerability.
So if I am going through divorce and I show up with my team and just say, hey guys, I'm struggling a bit here today because I'm in the process of a divorce, and I'm upset about the whole situation. So I apologize if seem to be less than fully here. What that happens is that the rest of the team begin to connect with me at a heart level, not just at a head level. There's a deeper bond that's created when people begin to share and begin to be more vulnerable and transparent about what their challenges are. If I show up with, hey guys, I'm trying to get ready for this huge, account presentation, and I'm not sure the best approach to take, because there are 3 different ways from Sunday we can do this deal, and I'm struggling with the best way, and it's important. That's being vulnerable. I mean, it's my responsibility. It's my job. It's called the head of sales or business development. Right. And so I'm being pretty vulnerable to say, hey, I don't have the answers. But what that does is it engages people at a heart level that now people are showing up to try and help you and strategize with you, brainstorm with you, support you in ways that you wouldn't have had before. And so that's where the power comes in. The power actually helps to create, maybe for the first time, a true team. Okay, trust is the number one factor that is underdeveloped, and there's the lack of time that's spent in creating deeper levels of trust. We see that across the board. It doesn't matter what size organization people are running. And so we spend lots of time on results. We spend lots of times on to-do lists. We spend lots of times on issues, but we don't spend time on building trust. And so most organizations that we come into, they talk about management teams and this team and that team. They're not really teams, because if you don't,
groups of people,
they're functional work groups. And And so again, that's a cultural shift to say, no, we're not going to be a functional work group because, Kevin, I know that you are more than just, your business title. I know that you have a daughter. I know that you're looking to see family. I know that you grew up in Greenville. I know that you're more than your, your business title. And once you begin to know, I know that about you, you'll trust me more.
Well,
if you don't know the name of my spouse or the name of my kids, I'm not going to trust you completely.
Exactly. And so Jeff is busting out some stuff there because we spent about 3 or 4 minutes before we started. I mean, it's still, we don't know each other well. We never saw each other until, 20 minutes ago. But we took a little time to do that. It's something I try to do with every guest. And it's great actually that it shows up in this conversation, because I think that's exactly what we need to be doing as leaders. I know that makes for a better interview, right? Yeah. It also makes more enjoyable for me to spend 30 or 40 minutes of my life with a smart guy on the other end of a camera, right? Yeah. And so I think taking the time to do that is incredibly important. It's important not just if your team is down the hall or on the shop floor, but if your team is remote like mine is, like most of mine is, we got to be figuring out how to do that stuff. So you make a statement in the book that really resonates with me, and it's not the order I was going to talk about this in, but that's where we're at. So I want to talk about this. You say in the book, you and Barry say, the height of a team's performance is directly related to the depth of connection among its members. Yeah. So you started to head that way. I'm going to say it again. Then I want you to just talk about that a little bit. The height of a team's performance is directly related to the depth of connection among its members. Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. I think that the title of the book, Power of Vulnerability, in and of itself sounds like a paradox. And I think that this statement is very much a paradox, right? Because I think that's the way things operate. The deeper our connection, the deeper I know you, the greater our level of trust, then the more that we're going to lean on each other, the more that we're going to create synergy amongst each other, which then elevates the entire team. And that only comes when we start stepping into tougher conversations. We start actually dealing with conflict. We actually name the elephants that are dancing in the room, and we start actually tackling those issues in a real constructive, productive way. Trust is built through these shared experiences. And, that's a shared experience. If we can get through some tough issues together, it always helps to galvanize the team. If we can go through deeper levels of conversation around you getting to know me in a more transparent way and me getting to know you, all of that leads to a deeper sense of connection, trust, bond, and understanding. So one of the other things that impacts trust is if I don't completely understand your motivations, what drives you are really based on your value system, right? Yeah, so what you value drives your behavior. Well, if I don't understand and I see you doing something, I may say, oh, I wonder if he's just making a power grab, or his point of view is self-serving for this particular interest. But if I know you at a deeper level and I hear your values coming through, the direction that you're offering or the counsel you're giving or the input, I can take that from where it's coming from. I don't have to be suspicious or defensive. And trust me, as you know, business cultures have a lot of that CYA orientation, and everybody's a little close to the vest and guarded. And, that's the old school way of doing business. I don't share feelings. I don't share, deep things about myself. And there's no place for that in business. And that's changing.
And I can tell you that as leading an organization, that I tried hard for that not to be the way we do business. When people join us, they're often not used to that, right? And so that leads me to this question: like, what is our role as a leader? People listening to us, Jeff, our leaders or aspiring leaders, what is our role at whatever level? Whether we're a frontline, first level supervisor, or we're a CEO. What is our role in making this happen, in creating these deeper connections, in creating more empowerment. How do we do it?
Well, I think the nice thing
besides
about
read the book, I know you got to read the book.
Got to read the book.
That.
Well, the nice thing that I think that the book illustrates is that it can come from the CEO, which is great. Top down always is a great place to start. But the truth is, it can come from anybody in the organization, and what it takes is putting some toes in the water. I don't want anybody to start wearing their heart on their sleeve when the group isn't ready. But what I do want...
Do not go all Greg Louganis here and showing my age. We don't need to be diving into the deep end because you don't know what will happen, right? I think that's a great analogy of dipping our toes in the pool.
Dip your toes in the water. There are some baby steps people can take to just begin to show up with a bit more of themselves, a bit more of themselves, a bit more of themselves. With that, people will connect to them really, truthfully, in a more genuine way. Because as I show up as a more transparent person, people get to know me, and I'm more genuine, right? By definition, I'm less superficial. And so as I begin to do that, it will actually begin to invite others to try the same thing. And so pretty soon we can all begin dipping our toes in the water until we're all playing in the shallow end, having a good time. And so little by little, we'll get there. And so it's, cultural change is not a flip of the switch. It is a process, but it takes intentional focus. And my suggestion to leaders and individuals is that this is really about you. I want you to be completely fulfilled in your life. I want you to feel your passion and joy and excitement, all those things we all would wish our jobs could help us feel.
Yep.
But it comes from within. I have to be willing to take the first step to begin to show up differently. It's my life. It's my choice to govern or filter, and it's my choice to show up with what my truth is.
So what I'm hearing you say, Jeff, and so I'll say it in different words for everybody's benefit, so they hear it twice, is start where you are. Doesn't matter what your role is or where you are in the organization, start. And so maybe what some of those steps might look like might be different if we're a CEO than if we're, a member of the team or a front level leader or a mid-level leader. But start where we are and dip the toe in and get started. So I think it's great. It's great stuff. There's lots more I'd love for us to talk about, Jeff, but I have something that I do on every episode with people, and I've sort of changed what I call it. I'm started calling it the fast break. You're from the Midwest, so you'll appreciate that, I think. The fast break. So what I've got is a couple of 3 ideas, Jeff.
Okay.
And I'm going to just say the idea. I just want you to share your first thoughts about it, or whatever it is you feel led to say about that idea. May connect with the book. It may not. How does that sound?
Okay. Sounds great.
Are you ready?
I'm ready. Let's go.
The first one is organizational culture.
Crucial asset for every organization.
And, in this call we've been talking about, or in this episode we've been talking about, how you start to change it, and you start it from where you are.
And it's a lost asset. Most people don't focus on it as being an asset. And I think that's the shift. You have to be able to realize that just as much as your balance sheet, your financial statement, the human resources, your culture is something that is an asset of the organization. And most companies don't define it, and cultures will define themselves if you don't define them.
Oh yeah, you got one. Right.
Yeah, that's right. Every organization has one.
It's how big of an asset, what kind of an asset do you want it to be, right? So here's the next one, coaching.
Everybody can get better. Think about the Top Gun show, and I may be dating myself. You can be the best of the best, and we'll make you better. And so I think it's a yearning for learning. How can I continue to grow? And so I think that's the zest that I like for myself and my clients enjoy.
All right, and the last one is process improvement.
Continuous improvement. I think that it's one of those things that, again, I kind of come back to learning. I'm a process guy, and so I think that's process improvement is something that if you can find the key piece of your organization that you would like to change, just one thing, then I would work on changing that one thing. Every organization has at least one process that if they spent time against it in every department, it would make a difference.
There you go. See, that wasn't so hard.
It wasn't.
So now, speaking of not hard, what do you do, Jeff, for fun? You've got all these clients, you got all this doing all this coaching, just got this book, you're out telling everybody about this book, but what do you do for fun?
Well, I think most of my fun is centered around my boys. I was mentioning to you, I've got a 15-year-old in high school, a 28-year-old who's in the workforce, and 2 that are in college. And so my fun is being an engaged father. Love doing things with my boys. Whatever that is, I'm a happy camper.
There you go. So we've been talking about the book. I'm going to say the name of it again. It is called The Power of Vulnerability, written by Jeff Manchester and his cohort, Barry Kaplan. So that's your book. But tell us about what you're reading or what you've read recently that people might find interesting.
Well, I like the Trust Factor that's out by Paul Zak. Again, I think that lines up a lot with the cultural inferences that we work on and kind of key to empowerment. So I like his work. Over the holidays, I'm taking advantage of some downtime to go back to some of my classics. James Allen, As a Man Thinketh, is just a timeless piece that I read and reread over the course of a year.
And by the way, if I think in 92 episodes in, you're the first person to mention As a Man Thinketh, which is kind of shocking in a way. Oh. And so everybody, I'll double underline that one for you if you haven't read that. Not going to take you very long to read it, give you a lot of things to think about as you go. So now maybe my last question for you, Jeff, and probably the one you're most interested in, is how can people find out more about you and your work and the book? So fill us in.
Okay, well, shift180.com is our website. You can go to Amazon and look up The Power of Vulnerability. Manchester and Kaplan are myself and my partner. And pick it up. It's a great read. It will give you some tools, and it's filled with stories about teams and leaders. Many of us are healthy skeptics, especially when it comes to cultural change and shifts. And I think it helps to identify how it's really made a difference for teams to go through this process.
Yeah, again, shift180.com, everybody, and the book is The Power of Vulnerability, how to create a team of leaders by shifting inward. And I would agree, it's loaded with stories, which makes it very readable. There's a lot of tools, some of which I had hoped we'd have a chance to talk about, which we didn't have time because we had such a good time. And now, everybody, I have a question for all of you listening and perhaps watching, and that is, now what? So after listening to us and hearing the ideas from Jeff, the question is, what are you going to go do? What action are you going to take? How might you dip your toe in the water? What might you do as a leader to step back and let others in? What action are you going to take as a result of our time together? Because if you don't do that, while it might have been entertaining, you might have found things more entertaining. We want to be more than just edifying here, but inspiring you to take action. And I hope that there's something here you will do. But I know that if you don't think about it and perhaps pause, hit the pause button on your podcast right now, you may not do that. So we hope you'll take action. So, hey, Jeff, thanks so much for being here. It was an absolute pleasure to spend some time with you, even if you are a Buckeye fan.
Thanks, Kevin. And I really appreciate our time. You've got a house divided there. I've got a little bit of that down here with my girlfriend as a Florida grad, a double Florida Gator. I'm a Florida State.
A Gator and a Seminole.
Gator and Seminole.
You know all about that then too.
All about it. Blessed Happy New Year to you.
Thanks. Thank you. And listen, everybody, before we go, if you loved what you heard, there's a whole lot of episodes to go back and listen to. If you've missed them, and listen, you can join us to have an input in what we're doing and to get updates on what we're doing with this podcast. You can do all that by joining our Facebook group. Just go to remarkablepodcast.com/Facebook. That's what you can get all the show notes and everything else. We can give all that stuff to you there. And again, thanks to Jeff. Thanks to all of you listening. And we'll be back next week, just like every week, right here on the Remarkable Leadership Podcast. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.